The colony on the edge of the Orion Belt was small, built from metal walls and stone foundations that stood against the endless wind. It was a place where people worked with their hands and trusted the ticking of machines more than the stars. Among those machines was a simple watch strapped to the wrist of a man named Aaron. The watch no longer moved. Its hands were frozen, locked on a time that never changed. Most people in the colony ignored it. To them, it was just an old relic that Aaron stubbornly refused to fix. But to Ellen, a young woman who often saw him walking through the marketplace with quiet steps, it was different. She felt that the watch carried a story. One morning, when the suns were rising together, Ellen walked past Aaron at the well. He was filling a metal jug with water, his expression calm as always. The watch caught the light, and for a moment the glass face shone like a mirror. She stopped and asked, "Why is your watch not moving?" Aaron lifted his eyes. For a long moment he said nothing, and Ellen thought he would ignore her like he did most people. But then his voice came, low and steady. It stopped when they took her. Ellen frowned. "Who?" "My sister." His gaze drifted toward the horizon, where the sky seemed to swallow the mountains. The night the ships came, Ellen had heard stories of that night. Everyone in the colony had. Long ago, before she was born, strange vessels had descended without warning. They made no sound and carried no banners. They opened their bays and pulled people from their homes. Some resisted, but the colony had no weapons strong enough to stop them. By dawn, many were gone. Most had accepted that those taken were lost forever. But hearing Aaron speak, Ellen felt the weight of it in a new way. "You kept the watch broken?" she asked softly. "Yes." Aaron closed the lid on his jug and strapped it to his shoulder. "It will stay that way until I find her. When she is free, it will move again." The words stirred something inside Ellen. She wanted to ask more, but Aaron had already turned, walking back toward the mines where he worked each day. That night, Ellen sat outside her small home, looking at the stars. The colony was quiet except for the hum of the wind towers. She thought of Aaron's watch, of the way his eyes seemed to look beyond everything, as if he could still see that night long ago. Her father once told her that the people who were taken were chosen at random. Some thought it was for labor, others for experiments. Nobody knew. Ellen had always imagined it as a tale to frighten children. But now she realized it was not a tale. It was memory. The next day she saw Aaron again. He was repairing a lift at the mine, his hands steady and sure. Ellen noticed how careful he was with every gear and bolt. It was the same patience he showed with his watch. "Do you still believe she is alive?" she asked. Aaron tightened the screw. Before answering, "I know she is." "How?" He finally looked at her, and for the first time she saw more than silence in his eyes. She saw fire. "Because I would feel it if she was gone." Ellen could not argue with that. She had no siblings, but she understood bonds that words could not explain. Weeks passed, and Ellen found herself speaking with Aaron more often. Though he was quiet, he did not push her away. She learned that his sister's name was Lyra, and she had been taken when she was only 12. Aaron had been 16 then, strong enough to try to fight, but helpless against the light that pulled her into the sky. "Every time I look at the watch, I remember the sound," he said one evening as they walked near the ridge. No engines, no roar, only silence. Then the light swallowed her, and time stopped. Ellen shivered, imagining it, and no one tried to follow them. "We had no ships then," Aaron replied. "Only miners' crafts that could not leave orbit. The leaders told us to accept what was gone. But I will not accept it." They stood in silence, looking at the stars. Aaron's jaw was set, his hands clenched at his sides. Ellen realized then that his life was not only about mining and surviving. He carried a promise with him, as heavy as stone. One stormy night, the colony alarms rang. Not for danger, but for something unusual. The sky above lit with strange streaks, as if the heavens were tearing open. People rushed outside, pointing and whispering. Aaron stood still, staring at the lights. His watch remained frozen, but his eyes narrowed. "This is not random," he muttered. Ellen came beside him. "Do you Think it is them? I think it is a sign, he said firmly. The lights faded, leaving only stars behind. Most of the colony shrugged it off as a natural event, but Ellen saw how Aaron's hand gripped his watch, as if ready to mark a new time. That night, she could not sleep. She thought of Lyra, of the ships, of the silent promise Aaron carried. For the first time in her life, Ellen wondered if the colony was too small, too afraid. Perhaps there was something greater waiting beyond the horizon. Aaron continued to work in the mines, but Ellen noticed he spent more time at the comm tower, scanning signals. When she asked, he said he was listening for patterns, any sound that might guide him. Do you believe the sky will give you an answer? She asked. The sky took her, Aaron replied. So the sky must return her. Ellen thought his faith was strange, but also unshakable, and she realized that she wanted to see what he would find. The colony lived in routine, days of labor, nights of silence. But for Ellen, everything had changed. The story of the frozen watch was no longer just Aaron's burden. It had become hers too. She looked at him one evening, as the suns dipped below the mountains, and said, when the time comes, you will not search alone. Aaron turned his wrist, looking at the unmoving hands of the watch for the first time in years. He smiled. Then time may yet start again. The colony returned to its quiet rhythm after the night of strange lights in the sky. But for Aaron it was different. He could not forget what he had seen. For him the streaks were not random colors in the heavens. They were reminders. They were whispers of that night when everything had changed. Ellen noticed it too. She saw how often Aaron went to the comm tower after work, while others returned to their homes. He would climb the metal ladder, sit before the old consoles, and listen to the faint static of the deep channels. Sometimes his eyes would brighten for a second when he caught a pulse. But then the noise would fade. One evening Ellen asked, what do you hope to find in that static? Aaron kept his eyes on the screen. Anything. A pattern. A signal. A voice. Something that tells me they are still out there. You mean your sister. My sister. And the ones who took her. Ellen fell silent. She could hear the determination in his voice. It was not anger. It was not despair. It was something deeper, something unbreakable. The colony elders spoke of the night of the disappearance in hushed tones. Ellen had only ever heard fragments. Now, sitting by the fire in her father's house, she asked him to tell her the full truth. Her father's face grew tense. He was one of the few still alive who had seen it with his own eyes. It was sudden, he said. The sky filled with lights, not like stars but like blades of silver. The ships came without sound. No engines, no fire. Only silence. Then beams of light reached down into the streets. People were pulled from their homes as if lifted by invisible hands. No screams, no warning. And then they were gone. Ellen shivered. And no one followed? We had no means, her father answered. Our ships were miners' crafts, built for hauling stone, not crossing stars. We were helpless. By morning, they had vanished beyond our sight. We never saw them again. Ellen thought of Aaron's sister, a child of 12, taken in that silence. She thought of the watch that froze at that moment. Suddenly the story was not distant. It was alive. The next day she found Aaron in the old library hall. Few people visited the place anymore, but he had gathered star maps, dust-covered logs, and broken data tablets on the table. He studied them with steady focus. What are you looking for? She asked. Trails, he replied. They did not vanish into nothing. Ships leave marks, radiation, signals, something. If they passed this way, they left a path. Do you think you can really find it? Aaron looked up at her. If I do not try, who will? Ellen knew he was right. The colony had long accepted loss. No one else carried the search in their heart, only him. Weeks turned into months. Aaron worked in the mines during the day, but spent his nights on the search. Ellen sometimes joined him, helping to clean the old records and mark notes on the maps. She did not always understand what he was looking for, but she knew her presence mattered. One night, while they sat in the comm tower, Aaron froze, his headphones pressed against his ears, his hand hovering above the dial. What is it? Ellen whispered. A signal. He breathed. Static filled the room, but through it came a faint rhythm, like a slow heartbeat. Ellen leaned closer. It pulsed 3 times, paused, then repeated. Aaron's eyes burned with recognition. It is hers. Ellen frowned. How can you know? When we were children, Lyra and I made a code. 3 taps meant I am here. It was a game between us. She is sending it now. Ellen's chest tightened. If it was true, it meant she was alive. After all those years, she was alive. The signal faded after only a few minutes, but it was enough. Aaron slammed his notebook shut. This is the trail. I will follow it. The next morning, Aaron spoke to the colony council. He told them about the signal, about the code, about the chance that the taken ones still lived. But the council shook their heads. You risk chasing ghosts, one elder said. Our colony cannot spare ships for foolish searches, said another. But Aaron stood firm. I did not ask for your ships. I only ask that you do not stop me. The elders gave no blessing. But they did not forbid him. In truth, they no longer cared. They had buried their hope long ago. Ellen found Aaron outside the hall, his jaw tight. You will go, won't you? She asked. Yes, he said simply, with or without them. Then I am going with you. He stared at her, surprised. Ellen, this path will be hard. It may be endless, all the more reason you should not walk it alone, she replied. For a moment he looked at his watch. The frozen hands still locked on that terrible hour. Then he gave a slow nod. They began preparing in secret. Aaron knew how to repair old ships, and he chose one from the forgotten yard near the ridge. It was not large, but its engine still had power. Ellen helped gather supplies, water packs, food rations, and tools. Each night they worked under the cover of darkness. Each day they spoke little of it, carrying their plan like a hidden flame. Ellen asked once, while sealing a crate, do you ever fear what you will find? Aaron tightened the straps. I fear nothing more than finding nothing at all. At last the ship was ready. The hull gleamed under the suns, patched and polished inside. The controls hummed with new life. Ellen felt both fear and excitement. As she stepped aboard, Aaron placed his watch on the console. This will be our guide. It will move again only when she is free. Ellen nodded. Then let us find her. The engines roared, breaking the silence of the colony's sky. Few people noticed, and those who did only shook their heads. They believed it was madness. But for Aaron and Ellen, it was the beginning. The night of the disappearance would no longer be only a memory. It was now a call. As the ship rose above the mountains, the stars stretched wide before them. Somewhere out there, a faint signal pulsed, waiting to be heard again. And Aaron swore he would not return until he followed it to its end. The small ship drifted away from the colony world like a grain of sand leaving the shore. For Ellen, it was the first time she had left the ground. She pressed her face to the round glass of the window and saw the mountains grow smaller. Then the deserts, then the oceans. Soon the whole planet was nothing but a sphere of blue and brown. Glowing softly in the black sea of space, her heart raced with wonder and fear. The colony had always been her cage of stone and dust. And now she was beyond it. She turned to Aaron, who sat at the controls with steady hands. His face showed no excitement, no fear, only focus. The frozen watch lay on the panel before him, a silent promise. Do you know where to go? Ellen asked. Aaron adjusted the levers. The signal came. From beyond the asteroid belt. That is our first path. The engines hummed, and the stars stretched as they moved into the unknown. The journey through the asteroid belt was slow. The ship weaved between drifting rocks, some as small as pebbles, others as large as mountains. Ellen kept her eyes on the scanners, learning how to read the blinking lights that marked danger. Aaron guided the ship with precision. He had studied maps for years, and every choice he made was careful. Were you never afraid of leaving the colony? Ellen asked one night as they floated in the quiet shadows of a large asteroid. I was afraid every day, Aaron admitted, but I was more afraid of staying. If I stayed, she would remain lost forever, out here. At least I can move toward her. Ellen thought about that as she lay in her bunk. She admired his courage, but she also wondered if hope could survive in a place as vast as space. On the 3rd week, as the ship cleared the belt. The comm system began to stir. At first it was static, just as before, but then came the pulse. 3 beats, pause. 3 beats again. Ellen's breath caught. She is speaking again, Aaron whispered. His eyes were fixed on the monitor, where the pattern repeated and steady. Rhythm. Ellen leaned close. It is the same as before. Yes, but stronger now. We are closer. For the first time since leaving, Aaron allowed himself a small smile. It was not joy, but it was hope. They followed the signal. Each day it grew clearer, though sometimes it faded and made them doubt. The direction pointed toward the outer rim of the system, where the stars grew thin and the void stretched wide. Days turned into weeks, and life on the ship settled into routine. Aaron repaired the engines, checked the fuel, and watched the scanners. Ellen learned to cook from the ration packs, keep the air filters clean, and monitor the signal. They spoke little, but each word they shared grew heavier with meaning. One evening, as they floated near a quiet moon, Ellen asked, "Do you think your sister is alone out there?" Aaron shook his head. "No, they took many that night. If she is alive, others must be alive too. But she is the one I must find. The rest will follow." Ellen nodded. She thought of the families in the colony who still carried silent grief. If Aaron's search brought answers, it would not only heal his heart, but many others too. The signal soon changed. The simple pulse became a longer code, filled with pauses and bursts. Aaron wrote it down, his eyes sharp with recognition. "It is her way of speaking," he explained. "When we were children, she made longer rhythms to mean words. This one says wait." Ellen leaned closer. "Wait, for what?" Aaron tapped the paper. "Perhaps she is warning us. Perhaps she knows we are coming." The thought filled Ellen with both fear and excitement. If Lyra was truly alive, she was not only surviving, but sending messages across the stars. That meant she had strength. That meant she had hope. But hope was not enough to keep fear away. One night, as the signal grew sharp, the ship's alarm rang. Aaron jumped to the controls. A dark shape appeared on the scanner, moving fast toward them. Ellen's heart pounded. "What is it?" "A ship," Aaron said firmly. "Not from the colony. Not human." The vessel was large and angular, its surface black like shadow. No lights showed, but it moved with purpose. Aaron pulled the ship into a dive behind a cluster of drifting rocks. The enemy ship passed close, its silence more terrifying than any roar. Ellen held her breath until it was gone. Aaron kept his eyes on the scanner until the shape vanished into the distance. "Do you think it is them?" Ellen asked quietly. Aaron nodded once. "It must be." Ellen shivered. The thought of those silent ships, the same kind that had taken people years ago, filled her with dread. Yet it also proved something. The signal was real. The path was true. They were moving into the heart of the mystery dot as the days passed. The signal guided them to a strange region of space where the stars seemed blurred. Dust clouds twisted like rivers, glowing faintly with blue light. Aaron called it the Veil, a place not marked on any map he had studied. "It is hidden," he said as they entered. "Perhaps this is why no one has found them." Inside the Veil, the signal grew louder, but strange echoes filled the calm as well. Sometimes Ellen thought she heard voices within the static, soft and broken. Aaron stayed calm, writing every pattern, every pause, every fragment. Then came the moment they had been waiting for. The signal burst into a clear rhythm, stronger than ever. Aaron gripped the console. "She is near," he said with certainty. Ellen looked out the window. Ahead, hidden in the dust clouds, a faint shape began to appear. It was massive, larger than any station she had ever seen. Lights glimmered along its sides, and broken towers rose from its surface like the bones of a fallen city. Her breath caught. "What is that?" Aaron's eyes did not leave the shape. "That is where they are." The watch on the console remained still, its hands frozen. But Ellen felt that time itself was holding its breath. The signal pulsed again, steady and strong, guiding them toward the silent giant in the clouds. For years the colony had believed the taken ones were gone forever. But now, in the shadow of the Veil, Aaron and Ellen had proof. The disappearance was not an ending. It was a beginning. and the watch would not remain frozen forever. The ship drifted closer to the shadowed shape hidden inside the glowing dust clouds. To Ellen, it looked less like a station and more like a ruined city floating in the dark. Its towers leaned at strange angles, some broken, some whole, as if it had been abandoned long ago. Faint lights flickered across its surface, but none steady enough to feel alive. Aaron's hands gripped the controls. His eyes were sharp, but his jaw was tense. "This is where the signal comes from," he said. Ellen pressed her face against the glass. The sheer size of the structure overwhelmed her. It stretched farther than her eyes could measure, like a mountain built for giants. "Do you think your sister is in there?" she whispered. "She is here," Aaron answered firmly. "I can feel it." The signal pulsed again through the comm. 3 steady beats, then silence. It was like a heartbeat calling them forward. The closer they came, the heavier the air seemed to feel, even inside the ship. Ellen tried to calm her breath. "It looks broken. What if it cannot hold us?" Aaron studied the panels. "Parts are damaged, yes, but not dead. Someone still keeps this alive. Look at those lights. They are not random. They are guiding us." Ellen followed his gaze. The flickers on the surface of the massive station seemed to form patterns, as if drawing lines toward a single port. Slowly, Aaron steered their ship into the opening. The port was dark, their own. Light swept across the walls of a huge tunnel, metal and stone fused together. Strange carvings lined the surface, shapes of stars and figures she could not understand. The ship settled inside with a heavy thud. Silence filled the air. Only the faint hum of their engines remained. Ellen unstrapped herself and looked to Aaron. "What now?" "We go inside," he said. His voice was calm, but there was a weight behind it. She hesitated. The idea of leaving the safety of the ship and stepping into that hollow place filled her with fear, but she also knew they had not come all this way to stay inside. They put on light suits and carried small lamps. Aaron placed his watch back on his wrist, fastening the strap as if sealing a promise. Then he opened the hatch. Cold air rushed in, carrying a faint smell of metal and dust. They stepped onto the station floor. Their lights revealed long halls stretching into the shadows. Every surface was carved with patterns. The walls hummed faintly, like the sound of a distant song. "It is not empty," Ellen whispered. "No," Aaron agreed. "It is waiting." They walked through the halls, their footsteps echoing. The carvings grew larger and more detailed. Ellen stopped at one and traced it with her fingers. The shapes showed tall beings reaching toward the stars, their hands raised, as if calling for help. "Do you think they built this?" she asked. Aaron studied the images. "Perhaps. Or perhaps those who came after made these marks to remember them. Either way, this place carries history." They pressed on. The air grew colder, and the hum of the walls turned sharper, like a whisper pressing into their ears. Ellen shivered. Suddenly, the comm unit on Aaron's suit crackled. A faint pulse echoed. 3 beats again, Ellen gasped. "She is near," Aaron said. His voice grew stronger with each word. They entered a wide chamber filled with strange machines. Tall glass cylinders lined the walls, each one glowing faintly blue. Inside some of them, Ellen saw shapes. Her heart leapt. "Aaron, look." He rushed forward, shining his lamp on one of the cylinders. Inside lay a figure, motionless but whole. The being was not human, but its body was preserved, its face peaceful. Ellen counted at least 10 of them, each different from the other. Some tall, some short, some with features she could not name. All were frozen in the same deep sleep. "What are they?" she whispered. "Prisoners," Aaron said, his jaw tightening. Like her. They searched the chamber, their lights dancing, across rows of silent sleepers. Then Aaron stopped, his breath caught. There, inside one of the cylinders, was a young girl. Her hair floated gently in the glowing liquid. Her small hands pressed lightly against the glass. "Lyra," Aaron whispered. Ellen's eyes widened. The girl looked exactly as she must have on the night she was taken. Time had not touched her. Aaron pressed his hand against the glass. His watch, still frozen, reflected against the blue glow. "I found you," he whispered. Ellen's heart swelled with relief and fear. "How do we free her?" Aaron studied the controls on the side of the cylinder. Strange symbols glowed faintly, shifting like water. I do not know, he admitted, but I will learn. As he touched the panel, the hum of the chamber changed. Lights across the walls brightened, and the machine stirred. Ellen's breath quickened. "We are not alone," she said. From the far side of the hall came the sound of grinding metal. Shapes moved in the shadows. Ellen gripped her lamp tighter. The figures stepped into the light. They were tall, mechanical beings, their bodies shining like armor, their eyes glowing with cold light. Guards. Aaron said under his breath. The machines raised their arms. Strange tools gleamed, pulsing with energy. They stepped closer, slow and steady. Ellen's heart pounded. "What do we do?" Aaron's eyes never left his sister. His voice was steady. "We stand." The machines drew closer, but Aaron reached for the control panel again. He pressed a sequence of glowing symbols. The cylinder holding Lyra flickered, and the glow dimmed. Ellen gasped. "Aaron, the guards." He turned to her, his voice firm. "Keep the light on them. Blind their eyes." Ellen raised her lamp, shining the beam into the faces of the machines. They faltered, shifting their steps. Aaron pressed the final symbol, and the cylinder hissed. The glass began to open. Cold mist spilled out, and the girl inside stirred. Her eyes fluttered open, confused. But alive, Aaron reached forward, catching her as she fell into his arms. The watch on his wrist gave a sudden tick. Then another. Slowly, the frozen hands began to move. Ellen gasped at the sound. The watch was alive again. The guards roared with metallic voices, stepping forward in anger. Aaron lifted his sister into his arms, his face set with determination. "She is free," he said. "Now we must leave." Ellen nodded, her fear turning into resolve. Together they turned toward the exit, carrying Lyra and the promise of hope. While the machines closed in behind them, the station was no longer silent. It was awake, and their journey into the unknown had only just begun. The hiss of the cylinder still echoed in Aaron's ears as he held his sister close. Lyra was weak and pale, her body trembling from the long years of sleep, but she was alive. That was enough. The ticking of his watch was steady now, each beat, reminding him that the vow he made was no longer only a dream. Ellen stood at his side, her lamp raised toward the mechanical guards that filled the chamber. Their glowing eyes glared through the light, their bodies shifting with slow steps. The sound of their metal limbs was sharp against the silence of the hall. "We cannot fight them all," Ellen whispered. Aaron tightened his grip around Lyra. "We do not need to fight them. We need to escape." He turned toward the passage from which they had entered. The machines followed, their steps heavy and unyielding. The chamber's walls hummed louder, as if the station itself had awakened to watch. Their movements, they ran through the long corridors, their footsteps echoing on the cold metal floor. Ellen kept her lamp pointed behind them, forcing the guards to slow with each flash of light. Aaron carried Lyra carefully, whispering her name to keep her awake. "I knew you would come." Lyra murmured, her voice faint like wind. "I never stopped searching," Aaron answered. His heart burned with both joy and fear. The hall seemed endless. Strange doors lined the walls, each sealed tight with symbols carved into their surfaces. Ellen glanced at them as they passed, and her stomach tightened. Behind those doors could be more prisoners, more people trapped as Lyra had been. "Aaron," she called, her voice heavy with urgency. "There are others here. We cannot leave them." Aaron's steps slowed for a moment. His eyes met hers, and he saw the truth in her words. But with the guards pressing closer, he had no answer. The corridor ended in a wide chamber that opened into several paths. The walls were filled with more of the glowing cylinders. Dozens upon dozens stretched into the shadows, each holding a body inside. Humans, aliens, young and old, all sleeping, silent, waiting. Ellen stopped in awe. This is not just a prison. It is a graveyard of hope. Aaron looked around, his jaw clenched. He recognized some of the human faces, older now than when they were taken, but still alive in their frozen states. Families from his colony, friends, people whose names had been carved into stone memorials back home. "They are alive," he whispered. "All this time, they were here, Lyra stirred weakly in his arms. They've kept us waiting. Machines, watching. Her words trailed off, but her eyes begged him not to abandon the others. Aaron felt the weight of her gaze. His heart told him he had found what he came for, but his conscience told him the mission was larger than his vow. Humanity could not turn away from this discovery. The sound of grinding metal echoed through the chamber. The guards were coming closer. Their glowing eyes filled the entrance behind them. Ellen turned in panic. "We have no time. What do we do?" Aaron searched the walls, his eyes darting over the panels beside the cylinders. Each was marked with shifting symbols. His fingers brushed one, and it lit with sudden brightness. The hum of the machines grew louder. "These panels control the pods." Aaron said quickly, "If I can break their hold, I can wake them. But the guards, they cannot stop us all if we free them." Ellen's lamp trembled in her hands. But then she nodded. "Tell me what to do." Together they moved to the panels, their fingers racing across the strange symbols. Aaron pressed patterns that seemed to echo Lyra's code. Ellen copied his motions, trying to match the flow. The pods flickered with light, the blue glow fading to white. One by one, the prisoners stirred inside, their hands twitching, their eyes fluttering open. The machines roared with sudden alarm. Their heavy steps grew faster. Energy flared from their arms, striking the walls with sharp bursts of light. The chamber shook. Ellen cried out, but Aaron kept pressing the panels. "Keep going. Do not stop." The first pod opened, releasing a man with gray hair and weary eyes. He collapsed to the floor, gasping for air. Another pod opened, then another. Soon voices filled the chamber, weak but alive. The guards charged forward. Ellen shone her lamp directly into their eyes, forcing them to stagger. Prisoners scrambled out of their pods, confused but desperate to escape. "Run," Aaron shouted to them. "Follow the Carters. Find the exit." Chaos filled the hall. The prisoners moved like a rising tide, their numbers overwhelming the narrow paths. The guards fought to contain them, but there were too many. Each prisoner who awoke added to the strength of the crowd. Ellen grabbed Aaron's arm. "We cannot hold this place. We must leave." Aaron nodded. He lifted Lyra again and guided her through the press of bodies. Round them, prisoners shouted. In many tongues, voices of different worlds joining in the same struggle. For the first time since stepping into the station, Ellen felt the weight of fear lessen. This was no longer just the two of them. It was many. It was strength. They pushed toward the far end of the chamber, where a wide door loomed. Aaron pressed his hand to the panel beside it. The symbols glowed, then the door slid open with a heavy groan. Beyond was another vast corridor, darker and colder, but leading away from the guards. "Go." Aaron urged the crowd. "Move quickly." Prisoners poured into the new passage, their footsteps echoing like a storm. The guards tried to follow, but the sheer number of free captives slowed their advance. Ellen ran beside Aaron, her chest burning, her lamp shaking in her grip. She looked at Lyra, who clung weakly to her brother's shoulder, even in her weakness. The girl's eyes held determination. She was not broken. She had survived. As they fled deeper into the station, Ellen asked, "Why would they keep so many alive? Why not end them?" Aaron shook his head. "I do not know, but I will learn. Whatever purpose this prison served, it ends now." The corridor twisted downward, leading into another chamber, unlike the others. This one was filled not with pods, but with machines. Tall pillars lined the walls, pulsing with strange energy. At the center stood a massive core, glowing like a star trapped in glass. The freed prisoners slowed, staring at it with fear and awe. The hum of the station was loudest here, almost deafening. Ellen's skin prickled. "This is the heart," she whispered. Aaron looked at it with grim resolve. "And if we destroy the heart, the prison will fall." Behind them, the guards roared again, pushing closer through the fleeing crowd. Time was running out. Aaron placed Lyra gently in Ellen's arms. "Keep her safe," he said. Ellen's eyes widened. "What are you going to do? End this?" He turned toward the glowing core, his watch ticking steadily on his wrist. For years it had been frozen in silence. Now it beat with life, each tick pushing him forward. Ellen wanted to call out, but she saw the fire in his eyes. It was not only about his sister anymore. It was about everyone who had been silenced in this place. The silent prison had held its captives for too long. Now it would face humanity's defiance. The chamber shook with each strike of the guards' heavy steps. Sparks rained from the walls as beams of energy cut through the air. The freed prisoners scattered in fear. Yet many gathered their courage and stood shoulder to shoulder. For the first time, they were not captives. They were free, and freedom gave them strength. Aaron placed Lyra in Ellen's arms again. She was weak but awake, her eyes filled with trust. Ellen held her tightly, her own heart racing with fear and determination. Aaron turned toward the glowing core at the center of the chamber. It pulsed like a living heart, bright enough to paint his face in silver light. "This is their power," he said. "If it falls, the prison falls." Ellen's voice shook. "How will you destroy it?" Aaron glanced at the scattered machines and pillars humming around them. "Not alone. We will use what they built against them." The guards charged through the entrance, their tall frames glowing with blue energy. Their arms shifted into strange weapons, sharp and dangerous. The sound of their steps echoed like thunder. The prisoners backed away in panic. But Aaron stepped forward, his voice strong. "Do not run. They believe we are weak. Show them we are not." His words cut through the fear. A few prisoners, their eyes blazing with anger after years of silence, picked up broken metal rods and shattered pieces from the floor. Others raised their fists, their voices rising in defiance. Ellen felt the change in the air. For so long these people had been shadows, trapped in endless sleep. Now they were awake, and their strength was more than physical. It was the will to live. The first guard swung its weapon, sending a blast of energy toward the crowd. Aaron pulled a panel from the wall and raised it like a shield. The blast struck, shaking his arms, but the panel held. He shoved it forward, slamming the guard back. "Use their machines," he shouted. "Turn their tools into our weapons." The prisoners followed. They pulled wires from the walls, used broken parts as clubs, and tore loose panels for shields. Ellen joined them, holding Lyra close behind a piece of metal while guiding others to strike where the guards were. Weakest, the battle filled the chamber. Sparks lit the air, and the hum of the core grew louder, almost like a scream. One of the prisoners, a tall alien with pale skin and glowing eyes, lifted a heavy rod and slammed it into a guard's chest. The machine stumbled, its glow flickering. Another prisoner leapt onto its back, pulling at the wires until the guard collapsed. Cheers filled the hall. For the first time, the prisoners saw that the guards could fall. Aaron fought at the front, his body moving with precision born not of training but of unbroken will. Every strike he made was for Lyra, every push for the years stolen from his people. His watch ticked louder in his ears, steady and strong. But the guards were many, and for each one that fell, two more entered. The chamber grew crowded, the sound of clashing metal deafening. Ellen's lamp flickered, and she felt her fear rise again. She looked at Aaron, who was now only a few steps from the glowing core. His hands reached for the control panel beside it, his face set with determination. "Keep them back," he shouted. "I need time." The prisoners formed a wall around him, their makeshift weapons raised. Ellen stood among them, her lamp in one hand and her other arm holding Lyra tight. She felt weak, but when she saw the courage in the faces around her, she found strength. Aaron's fingers moved across the glowing symbols on the panel. The language was strange, shifting like water, but he had studied it during their search. He pressed sequences that echoed Lyra's signal, hoping the same code that called to him could now break the prison's heart. The core pulsed faster, its light growing brighter. The hum turned into a deep vibration that shook the floor. One of the guards broke through the prisoner wall, raising its weapon toward Aaron. Ellen saw it and cried out, but before it could strike, a group of captives leapt onto its arms, dragging it down. Their cries filled the air, not of fear, but of strength. Aaron pressed the final symbol. The core flared with blinding light. The entire chamber shook. The guards froze in place, their eyes flickering wildly. The energy in their bodies sputtered, like dying flames. "It is working," Aaron shouted. "Hold them a little longer." The prisoners roared in defiance, Pushing against the machines, Ellen's voice joined theirs. Her fear replaced by fire. The core cracked. A sound like breaking glass echoed through the chamber. Light poured from the fracture, sweeping across the walls. Wherever it touched, the machines faltered, their limbs stiffening before they collapsed in silence. One by one, the guards fell. The chamber filled not with the roar of battle, but with the sound of freedom. When the light dimmed, the core was shattered. Its fragments floated like glowing dust in the air. The hum of the prison was gone. Silence returned, but it was not the silence of captivity. It was the silence of victory. The prisoners stood together, their eyes wide with disbelief. For so long they had been nothing but shadows and glass. Now they were awake, alive, and free. Aaron turned from the broken core, his chest rising with heavy breaths. His watch ticked steadily on his wrist. Lyra reached out from Ellen's arms, her voice soft but filled with strength. "You came," she whispered. Aaron knelt beside her, his hand brushing her hair. "I promised I would." Ellen looked at the faces around her, humans and aliens, strangers and neighbors, all united by the same struggle. She realized this was more than a rescue. This was a beginning. "Where do we go now?" she asked quietly. Aaron stood, lifting his sister to her feet. She was weak, but she leaned on him with trust. His eyes swept across the free captives, then back to the shattered core. "We go home," he said firmly, "and we carry their story with us. The world must know what was done here. Humanity must know we are not alone, and we are not powerless." The prisoners nodded, their voices rising in agreement. Hope burned in their eyes. Together they began their journey back through the corridors. The station was no longer alive. The lights flickered and faded, the hum gone. The prison had fallen as they moved. Ellen glanced at Aaron's watch. The ticking was steady, each beat marking the time that had been lost and the time they had regained. It was no longer a reminder of grief. It was a measure of hope. For years the silent prison had held its captives in chains of glass and silence. But now, because one man refused to forget, because one vow had been stronger than despair, the prison was broken. And in its fall, humanity had shown its stand. The corridors of the fallen prison stretched into silence. The hum of machines was gone, replaced by the uneven sound of footsteps and the heavy breathing of hundreds of free prisoners. For so long the station had been a place of chains and shadows, but now its walls echoed with life again. Aaron walked at the front, guiding the group with Lyra leaning on his shoulder. She was weak, but her eyes were open, and she clung to him as if she feared he might vanish if she let go. Ellen walked at his other side, her lamp held high, though it was no longer needed. The station's lights flickered faintly, enough to show the path ahead. For a time, no one spoke. The prisoners moved with quiet steps, their minds still heavy with the weight of years lost. Aaron could feel their silence pressing on him, and he knew they needed more than freedom. They needed hope. He stopped and turned to face them. The crowd, a mix of humans and aliens, lifted their eyes toward him. Some looked tired, others confused, and many still carried the emptiness of captivity. "You are free," Aaron said, his voice steady. "The prison is broken. They cannot hold you any longer." The words stirred the crowd. Murmurs spread through them, small voices that grew stronger with each passing second. For years they had been voiceless. Now their voices returned. Ellen stepped forward, raising her lamp. "This is not the end. This is the beginning. Together we will leave this place. Together we will return home." The prisoners nodded, their fear slowly giving way to courage. The journey through the corridors was long. Some passages were broken, filled with debris from the shattered machines. Others led into empty halls where more pods stood, dark and lifeless. Now that the core was destroyed, the sight of them made many prisoners shiver. They knew how close they had come to being trapped forever. Lyra's steps were weak, and Aaron lifted her into his arms again. She leaned against him, her breathing soft. "I dreamed," she whispered, "in the glass. I dreamed of light. I thought it was gone. But you came." Aaron's throat tightened. "I told you I would never stop searching." Her small smile gave him strength. At last they reached the docking bay. It was a vast chamber with high ceilings and a wide opening that showed the stars beyond. Ships lined the edges, silent and waiting. Some were alien in design, with curved frames and glowing engines. Others looked like older human models, taken long ago and left to gather dust. The sight filled the prisoners with wonder. After so many years trapped inside, the stars were like a promise. Aaron turned to the group. "These ships are our way out. We will leave this place, and we will not look back." The prisoners moved toward the ships, their tired faces brightening with hope. Ellen helped guide them, organizing small groups. Some of the prisoners had once been pilots or engineers, and they quickly studied the ships. The machines of the station had stolen their years, but not their skills. Soon the engines of several vessels began to hum with new life. Aaron stood beside one of the ships, his hand resting on its side. His watch ticked on his wrist, steady and calm. For years it had been frozen, waiting for this moment. Ellen joined him. "When we leave, the world will know," she said softly. "They will know what was done here. They will know what we faced." Aaron looked at Lyra, who sat inside the ship's cabin, watching the stars with wide eyes. His heart was heavy with all they had lost, yet light with what they had gained. "Yes," he said, "and they will know we did not break." Before departure, the prisoners gathered once more in the docking bay. Aaron stood at the front, his voice carrying through the chamber. "We came here as captives. We leave as survivors. The prison is gone, but our memory must remain. We must carry it home. We must tell our people that we stood together, that we fought, and that we won." A murmur of agreement spread through the crowd. Heads bowed in respect, not only for themselves, but for those who had not survived the years of silence. Lyra raised her voice, soft but clear. "They tried to keep us waiting forever, but forever ended today." The prisoners cheered, their voices echoing against the steel walls. It was not just a cheer of victory, it was a promise. The ships lifted from the floor, one by one. Engines glowed, filling the chamber with light. The docking bay doors opened wide, and the stars stretched before them like an endless ocean. Aaron sat at the controls of one ship, with Lyra beside him and Ellen just behind. His hands moved with care, guiding the vessel out into the void. Other ships followed, a fleet of survivors breaking free from the station's grasp. The prison shrank behind them, its broken frame drifting among the stars. For a moment, Aaron watched it. He thought of the years it had stolen, the voices it had silenced. Then he turned away. The watch on his wrist ticked, steady and strong dot as the fleet flew together. Ellen looked at Aaron. "What will you do now?" "Aaron's eyes stayed on the stars. "I will take my sister home. I will give her back the life that was stolen. After that, I will make sure no prison like this ever rises again." Ellen nodded. She knew his vow was not only for Lyra, it was for every prisoner, for every voice that had been silenced. Lyra reached for her brother's hand. "We will be together now," she whispered. Aaron squeezed her hand, his heart full. Yes, together. The fleet spread into the stars, carrying hope with them. Behind, the prison drifted in silence, no longer a place of fear, but a ruin. A reminder of what had been overcome. In that moment, Aaron understood the true meaning of his watch. It had stopped when Lyra was taken because time itself had stopped. For him, every day without her had been frozen, every tick silenced by loss. But now, with her at his side, the watch ticked again. It ticked not for vengeance. It ticked for life. The stars stretched endlessly before them, and the fleet carried on, their engines bright against the darkness. The silent prison was gone, but its story would live. A story of a brother who refused to give up, a sister who endured, and a people who found their strength in unity. And as long as the watch ticked on Aaron's wrist, it would remind him of the promise fulfilled. Time had restarted.